We are back in the tent, brought to you by PITME and ArabNet. We have a special guest today. Leandro is a good friend and has kind of been traveling down a similar path as I have, just in a different direction and different part of the world, but also globally. Anyway, Leandro, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for making time. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us who you are and what you've been up to, and then we'll get to tell some stories. So thanks for making time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course.
So, hi everyone. My name is Leandro Margulis. I'm originally from Argentina. If you were wondering where my accent is from, and I studied engineering. Started in Argentina, then moved to the U.S. Almost 10 years ago, due to the crisis and other economic opportunities. Almost 10 years ago, been working, always with an entrepreneurial, hunger, being that my parents are also entrepreneurs. Working my way through. Lived in Florida, then worked in management consulting around the different cities in the U.S. and then around the world. I moved from Florida to Ohio, was based out of Ohio, worked in Eastern Europe implementing ERP systems, but always the idea was to try to find a common solution that I could then start something with and help people make people's life better and more efficient.
Yeah.
So then went to business school. And keep working in consulting. Loved what I was doing regarding helping other people, but I wanted to have a much bigger impact, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to do that, but for smaller firms that I could actually help grow more.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I run the California office for Impulsa Business Accelerator, which is a second stage accelerator. It's actually not an incubator.
Yeah.
So it's not that we offer an office space and mentorship for people. It's for companies that already started, that graduated from those kind of incubators, to help them get to the next level.
Yeah. So it's actually what I call incubation 2.0, because it's actually helping with deals and revenue and sales and getting all that in the U.S. So tell us some of the countries that you're working on, and some of the companies that you've dealt with, and give us a couple examples, because
Absolutely.
This is obviously very relevant to our audience and some of the companies that are trying to come here from the Middle East. So
cool. So it's funny. This whole thing actually, this kind of second stage acceleration actually started in Mexico in 2004. So I'm basically opening an office in the U.S. for a company that originally started in Mexico. What we see is a lot of the companies from there actually want to come here, but in order to come here, they need to change a little bit either the way they're doing business or the way they monetize their product, or change it from if they're a software company, for example. We're helping a couple of software companies from Mexico. Mm-hmm. Instead of charging a typical licensing fee, to change to a software as a service, and that changes the strategy and the business process and kind of the model, right?
Yeah.
So we need to we basically help them with that, and it's been great. We're working with right now we have offices in Mexico, Peru, South Africa. We're opening in Sweden and Singapore later this year, and what we see is a lot of the same growth pains happen everywhere.
Yeah.
The specifics of whatever product you're doing may be different, but in terms of the strategic focus, business processes, talent, and finances, they all have the same challenges.
Oh yeah, it's the same. And then on top of all that, so you're an international company and you want to do business here. And I've worked with a few companies that are either raising money or trying to do deals here. But one of the biggest issues that I find is kind of culturally, or the mentality of how business is done in different parts of the world. So talk about that experience, and talk about the culture shock that people experience, and how you try to get them prepared for saying, okay, this is how it works here, and these are kind of the rules that you have to abide by.
Very, very good question. And actually, we see those kind of cultural shocks a lot, and that's what we put together actually in acclimation. I don't know how to call it, but a cultural program that we actually are bringing people for, entrepreneurs from Latin America. Right now, we're focusing on Latin America for a week to the US, to Silicon Valley, and we teach them how things are done here, which is very different than there. But one of the main things that we see is the issue of trust.
Yeah.
In other countries, people assume people are guilty until proven innocent, while in the US, people assume you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
Just like, I know that sounds a little bit more of a reality, but that actually changes the whole assumption about how you do business.
Totally.
And the spirit in which you enter any kind of agreement.
Yeah. Part of that, what I want to emphasize also is that, we live in the epicenter of startups or technology, right? And as big as it seems, it's really not that big, right? So the only thing you really, let's put money and all that aside. What you have is your relationships, your reputation, and people respecting your opinion or your feedback or thoughts, right? So what that means is that I think there's this gentleman's agreement or this honor code, right, to respect all three of these components. A, you are not going to be dishonest. B, you're not going to waste anybody's time. And C, if you're going to ask someone for help, you're going to follow through and be efficient and be on time and really try to respect people's, again, time, energy, and effort as much as they would you. And again, this is a unspoken agreement that everybody has, right? Nobody's going to really screw you or steal your idea or do something bad because you really can't. The ecosystem is not that big, and
reputation is everything.
Everything.
And then, we have a lot of that paranoia, I think, coming from the countries that we come from, right? If I tell you my idea, you're going to go away with it. And, you can sign non-disclosure agreements and stuff, but honestly, any agreement is only as good as the spirit in which you enter in.
Exactly.
So, but and also on the other hand, any idea, actually, I learned a lot from my dad regarding that. I'm translating from Spanish. One of the things that he tells me a lot is ideas. Great ideas are 10% inspiration and 90% sweating, and not a lot of people are willing to do the sweating.
Yeah. So execution, basically.
Exactly.
So anybody can have an idea, but and believe me, I have hundreds of those. But the reality is that the implementation, execution, and actually testing it and having any measure of success.
Yeah, and tweaking through all the iterations and putting the work and the effort that you need to put into all that.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are willing to do it.
And what I think the misconception people have is that building anything of that scale or anything that's relevant or important doesn't happen overnight. And it's not just, I told you today, tomorrow you're going to do it. Realistically, you're already doing something anyway, and if you're really, unethical and going to steal the idea, then the reality is then you should be my competition. I should try to beat you anyway. So the reality, though, is at the end of the day here, you're constantly meeting people, and you've probably met just as many startups and companies as I have, which I'm probably at like 1,500, 2,000, and I can tell you I've never signed a non-disclosure agreement. Like that is, and no investor will sign it. No, big brands sometimes are paranoid and they want you to sign one, but the reality is that it just doesn't happen because there is this gentleman's agreement. And by the way, most of the people that you connect with on a serious level are through introduction, a warm introduction. So then it's a relationship built on top of a relationship. So this agreement kind of automatically carries forward. So that's something that maybe South America and Eastern Europe and the Middle East, that doesn't still really exist fluently.
You're going back to the issue of trust, right? I mean, here there's a lot of implied assumptions about things you would do and you won't do that. We perhaps take for granted having lived here for long, right? But in other places, those are not the cases.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, and also I can tell you, I share a lot of the ideas sometimes. And actually, I end up with a better idea, and just by putting myself in that vulnerable position, I end up learning much more about better ways to actually improve and better my idea.
Exactly.
And then it's like,
very important.
And it comes to a point that you don't really care whose idea it is, because at that point it's like, well, you know, it was my idea, but then I got all this feedback from different people. But it becomes a better product, or a better feature, or a better software, whatever it is.
It is.
And it comes to a point that it doesn't matter whose idea it is. Like the owner of the company and the owner of the equity is going to be whoever puts the work to execute on that.
Exactly.
And in addition to that, you cannot execute alone. So if you have people that are passionate enough to give you feedback and want to get involved, and actually care, you might as well like become partners and move forward with it.
Yeah, exactly. Smaller portion of something is better than all of nothing. So that's and again, I think people just always are very paranoid, and that's kind of an ongoing theme that I've heard there. But again, whatever. We're trying to change that.
Yeah.
So we do something in the show here called Lessons Through Stories. I showed you our little board of funny topics. Did you get a chance to pick one out, or you want to?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna choose one and perhaps tweak it a little bit.
Sure.
The one that actually spoke to me, because we were talking about international markets.
Yeah.
It's reverse engineering.
Oh, I love that one. Please.
But instead of reverse engineering, what I was thinking about is talking a little bit about that, but a little bit about we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
We need to adapt, though.
Yeah.
So I think we don't have to be like super innovative to see great ideas in one place.
Yeah.
That exactly the same way or a little bit different.
Sure.
Could work somewhere else. I remember reading on Bloomberg Business Week, I don't remember the exact name, but there was a company in Europe that does exactly that. They copycat.
The German, the rocket something.
Yeah.
Rocket whatever, yeah.
So, I mean, they're not inventing anything, but they're getting great successful business models and just replicating them, right? It's not rocket science, but they get the credit because they're good at executing and adapting that, right? I mean, I don't see why we couldn't do that in the Middle East, in Latin America, and other parts of the world.
Yeah, I'll give you a funny example. So through Founder Institute, there was a chapter in Colombia, and a very bright entrepreneur basically built an online platform for people to get insurance. Okay, and to us it's like, what do you mean you're building an online platform to get insurance? He's like, it doesn't exist. And so in the first month he had like 3,000 or 4,000 customers, and because it just literally there was no way for you to go online and buy insurance, and so that's a good example. And again, like a lot of people say, oh, it's a clone, it's not exciting, it's not this and that. You know what? I don't agree. I think that if there is an opportunity and you're passionate about it and you think you can execute, it's going to create livelihood for you and income for you, your employees, your family. There's nothing wrong with that.
And you're making a difference in the world, making people's lives better and more efficient and easier. So, I mean, why not?
I agree. So, again, I've traveled throughout the Middle East, and there's plenty of ideas that haven't been implemented or executed well. There are a lot of them that are starting to. And again, there's also ideas that are relevant to just that market. But, what we want to do is we want to inspire people to build businesses that they're passionate about. It has nothing to do with market size or what the product is. If you love what you do and you're building something cool and you're enjoying it, then more power to you. The final thing we do on the show is something called Old Rules. And it's really just, what's one of the rules that you live by, and it could be personal or business, but like what drives you, like what's one of your fundamental rules, and then also what do you like people to abide by when they're dealing with you as far as business and, inbound coming towards you?
Very, very good question. With regards to, I would say with regards about what guides me is, one of the things is, what kind of impact am I having? Am I wasting my time? Am I, with whatever I'm doing, right? Trying to figure that one out.
We can keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Start back up a little bit.
Okay. Rewind.
Yeah.
So with regards to the question about what guides me, I continually think about what impact and what difference am I making. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but that's actually something that is like my moral compass, right? I mean, sometimes I used to work on a really, really grandiose strategy, and it would end up in someone's drawer, right? That's not the kind of impact that I wanted to have. For me, it was much more rewarding to work with smaller companies that you're working directly with the leaders, that the decision makers, and you're creating jobs for other people, right? I mean, so the kind of impact that I'm making, that actually has guided me. And what do I expect from people dealing with me was the other part of the question. I expect a very honest and upfront conversation. I hate having that feeling when I meet somebody and it's like there was something they were hiding.
Bullshit.
Yeah, or
like a hidden agenda.
Yeah, or like, you know, I know there's something else, but they're not telling me. And you read there's something off or something missing. And that's not good for anybody.
No,
so.
It's definitely a waste of time. And again, if you have someone's attention and time, you might as well be a straight shooter.
And even if it doesn't work with, you know, business-wise, at least, you know, we meet interesting people and we make good friends, right?
Totally.
I mean,
and then, you know, how did we connect originally? I don't even remember. Like someone.
I think actually we connected the first time at the venture capital private equity.
That's right. Seems so long ago. It was right before I was going to the Middle East the first time.
Yeah.
And then remember I came back. I'm like, I have Leandro. There's all these things and blah blah. And you know, I'm like, it's kind of what you guys are doing. And so.
No, and it's really interesting that you know we ended up in a similar place and trying to have the similar kind of impact and difference, but from a different perspective, right? So it was very good in that sense that we aligned.
Totally.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we've become friends and. Again, we're civil engineers building bridges, and I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I hope we're having some sort of impact with this program. So with that, I want to thank you for making the time and
my pleasure.
Join us. By the way, this baklava is from Beirut. It's awesome, and I hope you enjoyed this. And we'll see you next time soon.
Cool.
Look forward to collaborating on some sort of projects, and then also. As our companies come here, I don't know if I mentioned to you, we're running an Indiegogo campaign to sponsor companies to come here. It'd be awesome if one or two of them could, you know, get some advice or mentorship from you and
definitely
really
come in
learn from your experiences.
Come in to help out as you know as a mentor, and you know from the Impulsa side, if there's anything more that we can do.
Yeah, of course.
Happy to explore that.
That was actually something we've been talking about as well. The reality is that the stage of companies that you guys are dealing with, that market is still something that we're trying to build, and it doesn't really exist. There's a few, but again, hopefully, I'm very optimistic that this is going to happen.
Yeah, and remember, even though perhaps I cannot help them directly with the program, happy to be a point of contact and introduce them to somebody else I could for specific things.
Yeah,
so
and that's
not a
what
problem.
it is. Okay,
cool.
Andrew, thanks again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of Technology in a Tent. Brought to you by PITME and ArabNet. Want to thank our sponsor, PayPal. We will see you next time. Peace.